You're listening to the Breakaway Wealth Podcast, the show that helps you build wealth faster, think outside the box, and break out of the herd. Here's your host, Jim Oliver.
Welcome back, Breakaway Wealth. I'm your host, Jim Oliver, and with me today, my great friend, Kyle Reese. Kyle, welcome.
Thank you, Jim. Thank you.
So, audience, today, we're going to do something a little bit different, Kyle, aren't we? So today, Kyle's going to ask me some questions, and we're going to go through and answer those questions, just kind of have a great dialogue, and hopefully you guys get some good information out of this. We're here to serve. We're here to add value and hopefully inspire somebody today to take an action that they haven't yet.
That's a great segue, Jim, because I was thinking back to kind of my first experiences, and a lot of the questions that we get from clients is, where do you start? And so that's kind of what I would love to hear from you. And I know, you can read Ownership, you can read, Make Bank Without Your Bank. You can listen to some more episodes, but could you just share a little bit about your experience buying your first company?
Yeah, absolutely. So to answer this question and kind of lay the foundation, let me tell you like a little bit about my history, and maybe it's a reminder, maybe for the audience, it's just maybe some people have heard it for the first time. But when I was first a financial planner, so I was 22 years old, and everybody in the office was going after these doctors and lawyers and executives, and they had to have the right suit and the right tie. And I was like, oh, those people, those are the ones with money. And I had grown up very blue collar, very poor, but I had worked in a small business when I was a kid, and the owner was wealthy. And I'm so thankful for all of these things that happen. And so I thought, gosh, I'm not relating to these people. I talked like an inner city kid. I didn't have good grammar, or I talked and I spoke a lot of slang. Now I know there are people out there that say, well, Jim, you still do that at 60. And that's probably true, but it was way worse when I was in my early 20s. Okay. You would not recognize my voice, I'm sure, if you heard me then. So I was driving down Santa Fe Avenue, Boulevard, whatever it is, in Denver. It's a major street. And I saw all of these little factories. And again, God just being like, knowing I'm slow, just said, go in there, start talking to those people. And that's what I did. So what I learned was all of these different businesses, right? And one was a welding shop. One was a plastics formation company. One was, and I would just have conversations with these people, these owners, and I would take them to lunch and coffee, just like you would do all the other prospects. But they started telling me about their business, and they started to tell me what was going right, what was going wrong. And so I learned about running a small business through them, right? And mistakes, home runs, singles, doubles, like what they were doing right, what they were doing wrong. So one day I'm in my office, and I'm talking to one of the business owners, and what he did is he did importing and exporting for, this is going to sound funny, but because I don't even think they have these anymore, but like jukeboxes and vending machines, right? So both of those things, importing and exporting for parts for vending machines. Now, you might laugh at that, but this was a lucrative company. And so we were talking, and he had a few challenges. Well, it's so funny because, things have a way of repeating themselves, and there's patterns out there in the world. God's a mathematician, right? Like there's patterns. And so he was having some problems, and another guy was telling me that he used to have, but then here's how he solved them. And I just started telling him about what if you do this to solve these problems? And he said, well, I'll tell you what, I'll do that to solve those problems. You partner with me, because I came up with the solutions, right? And I said, I'm willing to partner with you. And he goes, yeah, well, the business is worth $5 million. So if you want to buy half, just give me $2.5 million. And, I didn't have $2.5 million of cash. And I thought, uh-oh, there goes that. I'm never going to be a business owner. I need $2.5 million of cash to become a business owner. So what happened was, I was talking to a friend of mine who had retired at 35 years old with millions and millions and millions of dollars. He was a much smarter guy than me. And he said, well, Jim, you never use your own money. Banks don't use their own money. You think that I would have like caught on to that then. But again, remember, I went to public school. So I didn't catch on. And I said, well, how would you do this? And he goes, what's the business worth? And so I told him, and he said, okay, so here's what you do. The business is worth this. If the books line that up, then that's fine. We'll establish the price of the business at that. And anything on the growth, because of your ideas, you get 50%, the other person gets 50%. So uh, I, if that makes sense. Does that make sense the way I said that?
Yeah.
Okay. So then I brought that back to the owner of the business, and he's like, well, I was really wanting that check for $2.5 million, right? And I said, I bet if I were you, I would be wanting that too. But, and I'm not saying that as we grow this business and my 50% and whatever, then I might decide I want to buy back in at the 50%. So let's make that a provision. And if we grow really big and you don't want me to do that, we can make that a provision. It taught me two things. It was like this win-win. I wanted it to be fair to him. I wanted it to be fair to me. I just knew I didn't have the $2.5 million to pay him for half the business. And I said, you're always going to own more of it this way than me. We went through it. He agreed. We increased the business by $3 million, right? Over 3 years. And he was like, I think this is enough. I just want out. Right. And I thought, do I want to buy this business? Well, I didn't want to be an operator, talking about ownership, right? I just wanted to be the owner. He was the operator. So if we're going to lose the operator, then let's just sell the whole thing. We sold the whole thing and we got the price we wanted, everything else. We did seller finance. So I learned how to be on the seller side of seller finance. So again, everything just kind of lined up to teach me something that I've used over and over and over again on both sides, whether I'm the buyer or the seller of a business. And that's how I bought my first business and didn't put a dollar into it.
That's awesome. So one thing that you said I liked a lot was that you kind of felt a little bit of a letdown, right? Because you didn't have that $2.5 million of cash, but you didn't let that stop you from going and connecting with someone who's already been there and done that. A
Mhm.
guide, if you would, to get their experience and their advice on whether it was even worth continuing to pursue, even though, uh, from your perspective at that time, you weren't even a candidate for pursuing it. So walk me through the mindset that was kind of necessary for that.
Yeah. So actually, I borrowed that mindset from somebody else. And it's one of the reasons that I give back and I share. My friend that had retired, he had all the confidence in the world that we could do this. I didn't
Mm,
really know. So every time I had a question, I needed that Sherpa, that coach that, it's like building a house and going back to the architect and saying like, hey, what if we want to do this? Because I don't know if that wall can come down or not. Right.
yeah.
And so it was going and asking advice. I was listening to a Charlie Kirk thing today, and I realized that, Charlie Kirk, I mean, for people that don't know in the audience, barely graduated high school, dropped out of community college, really had no like formal education that way, right? But one of the smartest guys I've ever heard debate anybody, was smartest guys about the Bible, about history, about other books, because he reads 100 books a year. I'm sorry, he used to read 100 books a year. Now I'm sure he reads them much faster in heaven. And so, or maybe we just have all the knowledge that we ever need. Okay, I won't go down that road. But my point is that I love to learn things. I love to educate myself. I didn't ask questions in school because I was always like, I stuttered when I was young. I was like the kid that didn't want to raise his hand. I definitely didn't want to read out loud. But when I want to learn something, I ask a lot of questions. So I asked a lot of questions of this guy. And this guy had experience of buying like 4 or 5 companies. That was it. Right. So the mentor doesn't have to be Elon Musk. It doesn't have to be, somebody that owns 20, 30, whatever number of companies. This guy maybe owned 3. I don't know. It was just a few. But he knew how to do it. And he was willing to share with me just by asking.
The
So I
interesting
borrowed the
thing,
confidence.
yeah, you borrowed the confidence. That's great. He wasn't someone that you just found that owned a couple of businesses and retired. Like you knew this guy beforehand. I think that's one thing where a lot of people who run into an opportunity don't necessarily have those people in their connection base that are willing to take that time and that they also trust, right? Because it takes time to build that trust. So have you always pursued those people that are further than you and pursued maintaining relationships with them, finding ways to serve them so that when those, not so that, but eventually those opportunities do arise. And so it's easy to go to that person and ask for their help. Has that just been part of you forever?
I think again, it's something that I learned, Kyle, and I learned everything the hard way, man. I learned it the hard way. So I think that when I was first in the financial planning business, this senior guy who was the number one planner in our firm, so had the most clients, had the most assets under management, everything. Um, he said, "Hey, if you ever want to do a case together, let me know." And I said, "Oh, okay, great, man. He's going to help me out." And he said, "Yeah, I mean, we'll split the business, we'll split the commission, we'll split the fees, whatever, 50-50, which was such a generous offer. But my dumb punk butt, being from where I was and having a scarcity mindset at the time, I was like, "You're going to take half? You're going to take half? I mean, I've done all the hard work. I found them, blah, blah, blah." I thought that was the hard work, right? So I finally brought this person a case, right? Because I knew I was going to lose it. I wasn't going to get it. It wasn't like I came to like my senses. I realized that I'm not going to get this without him, right? It was a business owner, sophisticated business owner. This guy had way more experience with business owners than me. And I watched this guy take a case that I thought was a very, the case that it would be like here, and he made it here.
Hmm.
And I went, my 50% is actually worth more. But what I realized, more important than that, more important than any compensation, was that two people together, the client ate that up. It
Hmm.
was almost like they saw themselves as having this team. And it was like prestigious to have two people working on their stuff. And they knew, hey, I couldn't get a hold of you, so I got a hold of Robert. And I'm like, okay, great. And I know you know what I'm talking about because that's how we do
Yeah.
things at Create Talent. And again, just showing favor on me, I learned that immediately. And I was like, hey, when do you want to do that? Let me go find some more people. Back then, it wasn't like Create Tailwind where we try to do every case, at least two agents, sometimes three. Is I found myself wanting to bring him more and more and more cases because the clients wanted to work with us more and more and more rather than just some 22-year-old guy. They wanted to work with the guy that could say, oh, I've done this 30 times. I've done this for 30 years. I've done this. And even if they didn't tell me that, I saw it.
Hmm.
And so that's what gave me that mentality of you reach out to people that know what they're doing more than you. That was really the root of Who Not How. I'm not just stealing Dan Sullivan's Who Not How. I'm just saying when Dan Sullivan and Strategic Coach started talking about Who Not How, I was like, yeah, I mean, like I didn't write a book about it, but I've always done it that way.
It's fun hearing that directly related to the early part of your career, right? Because there's so many pivotal points as we progress, and I'm still young in mine. But one thing that I've always known is I don't want to be the guy, right? Because I just don't have all the answers for everybody. And teaming up with people like you, with Nick, people who have been there, people who have done it. It's not about getting the business; it's about serving the client. And we can serve them so much better
So
by
much
having
better.
a well-rounded and more available schedule because you put two people versus one person, you're going to have a more available schedule at net, right? So that's awesome. I didn't realize that that was the beginning of your career. It makes sense
Yeah.
why you serve people the way that you do now.
By the way, before I did that, Kyle, and I don't think I've ever shared this with you, maybe I've never shared it in the office, but one of the moments that really motivated me, and I don't believe that you can motivate anyone. I believe that you create an atmosphere to where they motivate themselves. I had to go to the managing partner of the firm to pay my rent and get an advance. I can remember it like it was yesterday. I literally had to pay rent that day and it was already late. And he wrote me a check like it was nothing. And I went, I'm never going to have to do that again. And so I was motivated, right? We're motivated by two things, pain and pleasure. The pain of having to go in there. I can almost still, I remember him writing out the check, right? This is 38 years ago. I remember him writing out the check. I think I remember pacing the hall for about 10 minutes before I actually knocked on the door to go in there. So,
Those humbling experiences earlier in my life definitely gave me that environment to motivate myself to never be in that situation again. And
yeah.
I don't remember who I was talking to. Someone was sharing, it's like, if you want to partner with somebody, partner with someone who's failed before. So tell me a little bit about, like, what would be one of those pivotal failures that you had?
You know, so I'll give you one is it's going to sound like a success and then it's going to turn into a failure. Okay. So there was a guy who was running this company, and it doesn't really matter what the company is doing. And that person is a client of Create Tailwind. So I won't go into some specifics. I want to change some stuff up a little bit. Okay. It's not going to change the intent of the story. I'm just not going to get the specifics of the company. And so I did the same thing with this guy. The company was worth $2 million. This guy thought he's getting $1 million check from me. And I said, no, 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 we're going to do it like this. Now, this one was way more successful. We took it from 2 million to 5. I think, no, actually it was 6 million because now I know the math in my head. So 6 million. So a $4 million increase, right? So I doubled the value for him, even
Mm,
though I'm taking 49% of the increase. He sues me. And he said, well, you knew the ideas that you had and you took advantage of me. So we went to court. We did all of this stuff and it went on forever. Attorneys made 6 figures after taxes, everything else, basically ate all of the profit. And because it was on an earnout basis, his distraction, because he was the operator even after the sale, the business dove back down to where it was worth. So what I ended up with was a legal bill, basically, right? And I knew that this guy was a little sketchy in his thinking. Not he wasn't sketchy like, doing something wrong or anything like that. He was just like trying to herd a cat, right? It's just, you can call your cat all day long and they just look at you like, I've never had a cat because I'm allergic, but like they just look at you. Like when I see friends' cats and I go, hey, kitty, 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 they look at me like, what's wrong with you? Now you call a dog, right? I was just down in the Keys and my friend had a dog who's on the boat. Hey, Maverick, come over here. Maverick runs over there, right? But trying to herd a cat is a different thing. This guy was like herding the cat. And so it was a failure because I realized something. You can't do good business with bad people. And I just went, okay, I'm never, ever, even the business looks so good. If it's not somebody that I want to be in business with, that I don't like believe and trust, and they have, they're not like trying to hurt a cat,
mhm.
then I don't do it.
Some people you can see that quickly, but you can't see that with everybody right away, right? Do you have a process that you've developed over time that allows you to underwrite those relationships?
So one, I think I'm pretty good at just reading people. So I think that's my first line of defense. I've also learned over the years the hard way. Okay. And I'll give you an example of this is I've learned the hard way of legal agreements are there to protect both sides. And I always want a legal agreement to be written. And if you want to ever see me get mad, is send me an agreement that's all in your favor. Okay. Because that pretty much tells me everything I need to know. Because I would never send somebody an agreement that's all in my favor. I want it to be a win-win. I believe in fairness. I believe in black and white. I don't believe in gray areas when it comes to right and wrong, right? I believe in light and darkness. There's only two. There's no like, hey, where the light fades and then it goes into darkness. No, that's not how it works. So I want a legal agreement that lets you get out if you want to get out and lets me get out if I want to get out. And I think that most agreements should have a morality clause because if you do something that is against my beliefs, I don't want to be in business with you.
Mm,
So I learned good attorneys in the beginning save you from bad attorneys in the end.
I'm processing a lot right now. And I appreciate that. Okay, so tell me a little bit about your first real estate property.
Okay, so the first real estate properties that I did, because you got to remember, I was a financial planner. I'll give you a failure, and no, I won't give you the failure because it's actually doesn't really matter. Is it was in Colorado? Okay, I was 38 and was a few years into building my infinite banking business. It's about the time, just right after I had started the transition from like being a traditional financial planner to being all in, be your own bank, buy assets, blah, the
Yeah.
meeting Nelson, right? And I had this opportunity to buy this little rental, not complex, but fourplex, right? I didn't know anything about how to buy it. The realtor wasn't a help at all. My like the person selling it really wasn't a help. And they wanted like too much and all this other stuff. And there was a guy that was in the oil, like he did oil drilling. What am I trying to say? Like oil wells. So he did oil wells. But he said, "Oh, I do real estate too." And so I called him and I said, "Hey, what should I be doing on this?" And he said, "Well, send me the books." I didn't even send you the books, right? And he goes, "Yeah, send me the books and the tax returns." So I asked the person for the books and the tax returns. I was shocked. I didn't even know that people give you that, right? On
Yeah.
real estate. And so I knew it on businesses, but I didn't know it on real estate. And so I was like, wait a minute. So if I'm buying this real estate, it's just buying a business. It's the real estate business. And I said, "Oh, okay, I got it. I know how to do this now." But I looked at the books and I was like, I don't know what's good numbers, what are bad numbers. You show me a welding company, I can tell you what are good numbers, what are bad numbers, what's good EBITDA, what's good margins. But I didn't know on real estate, right? I didn't know cash on cash returns on real estate. And so I took it to the client that did, and he said, "All right, well, here's the problem. Boom, 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 boom." And I said, "Oh, man, if I would have bought that for his price, I would have been in trouble." So he said, "Well, do it like this. Just tell him if you want that price, these are the terms I need. And I want you to 100% owner finance it." And so the guy didn't want 100% owner finance it. He would 90/10 it, right? Which I had the money to pay the down payment. So, and I just started to build my infinite banking system. And I can't remember if I could get all of it out of there or only part of it. But I used it, all of it, all of my cash value. And he seller financed, if I remember right, 90% of it. And it could have been 85, but it was better than anything I was going to get at the bank.
Yeah.
I do remember that. And so I buy this business because it's this real estate. And I thought, wait a minute. Well, who operates this business? It just started to make sense and it seemed easy. A property manager. That's my operator. They operate the real estate business for me. And so I called this guy. He said, "I can do all that for you." And this guy happened to be LDS, right? So he had all these LDS, the maintenance guy was LDS, the plumber was
Yeah.
LDS. And I was like, he's LDS. They're going to give us a good deal, which they did. So I never actually saw that first property, never saw it, never drove by it, anything. And I never talked to him in person after I coached his kid. But the funny thing was, every month I got a check in the mail. And there was the occasional bill for this repair and that repair. And it taught me, honestly, like, hey, I better hold back some money on that. This dumb kid from, LA, I was like spending it all. And then so when he needed a repair, we needed a hot water heater or whatever, I'm like, "Oh, we got to pay for a hot water heater." Not that I didn't have the money, I did. I started thinking, well, this makes sense that we would hold some back for these kinds of things that you're going to have. So
Yeah.
everything like I learned on that first deal was learned it by how do you learn how to water ski once you're up on the water, you just learn. Don't do that with the ski. Don't do that with the ski. Oops. You think you can go on that side of the wake, but don't do that. Like,
Yeah.
and you're gonna get whipped around, right? Or whatever it is. So yeah, that's how I got the first real estate. And then
Okay.
by
So
the
you're,
way, I bought more properties that I never saw and with him. And I remember one time, Kyle, just thinking, man, the market in Colorado's gone down. That was the dumbest thing I ever did. I bought these things. And he said, "Well, wait a minute, the value's down, but the rents aren't."
Hmm.
And I went, "Oh, okay, we're okay." And then the only mistake I made is when the value went up, I went, "I got to sell these." And I did. And I made money on all of them. because I had cash flow until I could sell them. If I would have not sold them, those things would just be cranking today.
Well, that's what I was going to ask you is your first business you already shared, that was what, a 3-year turnaround. And then your real estate, however many years, you don't own either of your firsts now. And I
No,
think one of the things that can be intimidating, me, growing up, swearing I would never be in entrepreneurship. I wanted business leadership, but never entrepreneurship. And I know there's a lot of people like me too. In that is like, it's terrifying, right? It's, oh my gosh, that's 2.5 million. Even if I use other people's money, that's 2.5 million I'm on the hook for. Like, this is the rest of my life. Like, how am I gonna, and there's this impression that these decisions that we make are very long term when they're oftentimes turnarounds a lot quicker than we might expect. Has that been your experience generally speaking?
absolutely. And you got to remember something is when you buy a stock, it has the potential of being worth zero, right? When you buy real estate, it doesn't have the potential of being zero. When you buy a business, does it have the potential of being zero? Maybe, but in rare situations, right? If
Hmm.
you buy a business that is not dependent on one customer, blah, blah, I mean, all these like kind of logic things, then so the way that I looked at it is what's the worst case scenario? And then compare that to what? Stocks, bonds, Vegas. And it made me realize that there's always a residual value, even if it goes down. So I could maybe lose 10%, 20%, but I wasn't losing everything.
Hmm.
And so as long as I could hold on, right? And what I mean is like in real estate, if there's a crash, it's just like in the stock market. You don't sell at the crash. That's the last thing you do. And so it gave me confidence to know that there would be a limited loss, not a total loss.
And do you use the same rationale now when you're looking at acquiring companies? What's the downside potential?
I use that with everything. I use that with golf clubs, right? If I go and I spend $1,500 for new irons, but I know I can sell them for 1,300. And by the way, I make sure I'm getting a discount. Thank you, golf guys in Bonita Springs, Florida. No, I'm just kidding. And if I get a discount, so like let's say they're $1,500, but I'm paying 1,200, and worst case scenario, I could sell them used for 1,000, and I don't like them. Am I willing to take a $200 bet? Sure, it's worth $200 to me to try those clubs.
Hmm.
So it's kind of the same mentality. Is okay if the business is I'm going to buy it on an earn out basis. I'm going to do this. Then that means that the seller wants the business to do better. Because if the business exceeds what it's currently doing, because they always tell you it's going up, right? Is then they get more money than what we're agreeing to. Again, it's a win-win. I need it to be balanced. I don't want it to be unfair. So it's harder to do that in real estate, but you can when you're buying multifamily or commercial or industrial, which is my favorite, because you could say, here are the books. Here's what this is worth. I pay you that. And if, this goes up more than we think, then you get more. If it stays the same, it's the price we agreed on. If it goes down, then you might get less. Right. And if it goes really bad, there's for a limited amount of time, might be 6 months, might be 24 months, I can get out. So now all of a sudden, these things that I had fear about, like you mentioned earlier, I don't have fear about them anymore.
Well, it seems like when the focus is the excitement of the upside potential, we can forget about the reality of the downside potential. When you are early on in your acquiring phase and business ownership and everything, did you recognize the potential down or the downside potential, or were you more focused on the upside potential of everything?
I was more focused on the upside potential because I would do some due diligence on, is this a growing business?
Right.
If it was something to do with AI right now, I would say, well, we're in the beginning phase of AI. And so how would this go down in value? If it was this company makes a plastic stoppers for equipment and hospitals because OSHA regulations say you have to have a rubber plastic stop so that thing doesn't roll down the thing, or a patient can't hit it and roll and run over their foot, or I don't know what all these rules are for. That's not going anywhere, right? So that if it was it's plastics, this is a friend of mine's company, plastics, and they're going to do orange cones. How are they going to replace orange cones? I don't think they are. Okay, all right. So orange cones are good. Like that
Yeah.
was kind of the thing is this a dying business? If it was a magazine, I'm glad I didn't invest in it,
Yeah.
right? Not that you can see everything coming and obsolescence coming, but you kind of know if it's a flash in the pan. When in the mid 2000s before the crash, a lot of people made money in the broker, being a mortgage broker, selling crummy loans. I never chased stuff like that in businesses and just in my life, in my companies. I really like things that are boring,
Mm.
trash, grocery stores, things that everybody needs. Plumbers. I mean, I'm looking at a plumbing company right now. Is cabinets. When I think of those kinds of things, I mean, I'm just trying to think of things that where are they going? I mean, is there a way to replace electricity? Not what I see in the near future.
Yeah. Well, Jim, thanks for sharing more of your background and the mindset going into acquiring these companies and your journey. I definitely learned some stuff, and I hope the listeners did as well.
Absolutely, man. It's funny because when, we started this and you said, hey, do you want me to tell you the questions that I'm going to ask? And I said, no, right? Because I want it to be just the reaction. And audience, I mean, I hope you got value today. I really thank Kyle for being here, being part of the team. I love to have somebody who's half my age on the team, but also has the character, the family values, the faith. It's cool because I know that you're sitting there, people that are in their 20s and 30s, and maybe even people in their 40s. They're like, how do I start this? How do I? And you know what it is? It's take action. Well, Jim, I'm afraid. I'm afraid to take action. Okay. Well, if you knew what you were going to do was the right thing, would you be afraid? Well, no. It's kind of like when I was looking at getting in shape, Kyle, I heard all these things. Eat, nothing because Nick likes this. Eat carnivore. Wow, man, it gives me heartburn. I can't do that. I don't want to eat like that. Eat keto. I like to have a cold beer after playing golf. So if I do keto, I can't even have one beer. Like all these things, right? Didn't fit for me.
Yeah.
But what did fit for me was when somebody said, hey, the reason some people are heavy and some people are in shape, part of it is your hormones. What are your hormones? And I went, my hormones, like testosterone, like this, like that. I don't know. I don't know how many there are hormones I have. And so what did I do? I went to a hormone specialist. I went to one, scam. Went to another one, super expensive. Went to a third one, boom, found my guy. Used that guy. He's an hour and a half away. And then I found my woman, not my woman, but a woman doctor that's 2 miles from my house. And she's the most incredible hormone person I've ever run into. So I went from here to here to here to here. My muscle went from here to here to here to here to here. And what I would say is I educated myself. When I went in and talked to her, I knew she was a badass because I knew the questions to ask. So I educated myself with those three people the people that I didn't want to work with, educated myself with the person I did work with, asked lots of questions. It wasn't like, well, I'm going to pay this person. It's too much. No, I'm getting my money's worth. All right.
That's a
So what I would
lifestyle,
say,
Jim.
huh?
Like what you're saying is just a lifestyle. It's a way of approaching life because you talked about stocks. They have the opportunity to be worth zero, right?
Yeah.
And a business just doesn't. Real estate just doesn't. But guess what? It's a lot easier to click purchase on a stock than it is to click purchase on a business or on a real estate deal. It takes time. It takes asking the right questions. It takes, ideally, if you're going into it your first time, it takes the right mentor. It takes relationships. It takes an understanding of the future. All of that is time, and all of that is a lot of effort compared to an exciting stock that seems like it's going up, but could be worth zero. And the way that you tied that into the health side of things, I just wanted to highlight, this is not something that you just do in business. This is a way of life. Are you going to take the time to understand what you're doing and why it works? Then you'll be successful.
Yeah. It's kind of like this is how many people just pick up the Bible, read something and say, okay, I'm going to accept Jesus as my Lord and Savior. Maybe some people are a lot smarter than me, but I don't know that it happens like that. Either your parents do it. For me, it was a guy named Wally knocking on my door. Okay. He led me. He knew more than me. He showed me, right? Did God move me? Yes. Did God move Wally? Yes. But God used him as the conduit for me to find God, right? Well, why would we think anything else would work differently, right? Why would we think anything would work differently? This is the way things work. So we can either say, that's not the way things work, or you could say, that's the way things work, and I'm going to follow that plan.
That's good. Relationships, man, they're key.
They're key. I mean, again, that's in the Bible, right? Again, if you don't know what to do, this is what Lou Holtz used to say, okay? Catholic dude, right? At Notre Dame, great football coach. He said, always do the right thing. And if you don't know what the right thing is, look in this book. It'll tell you. And I've never forgotten that. I've never forgotten. And Nick Knight likes to talk about this all the time. Nelson said, everything I'm going to teach you today about being your own banker, infinite banking, is through the lens of this book. So it means that things either align with that book, right? And even if you just think it's a book, which obviously I don't, Kyle doesn't, is we know it's the word of God, is wouldn't you want the creator, wouldn't you telling you how the world works? I mean, who else would tell you,
Yeah.
right? So,
I don't want anyone else who's trying to figure it out tell me how it works.
but 97% of the people that live on this earth follow the noise. Now think about this for a second. How many people own businesses, own real estate, blah, 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 blah. Yes, they own their own home, but that is not an asset. And so it's like that in everything. You have to be in the top 1 to 3%. And can you? Absolutely. Doing the same things everybody else is doing? Absolutely not. Yeah. Look, the way I grew up, somebody tells me, hey, to survive, you got to be in the top 3%. I don't care if it's Squid Game or whatever that show is. I've only watched like a couple episodes of that crazy thing. But I don't care what it is. It could be Hunger Games, right? 3%,
Yeah.
I'm in. I'll take those odds. I can do it. All right, man. Let's
Well,
wrap
great.
this up. Audience, again, thank you, Kyle, for being here. Thank you for the great questions. That was a lot of fun. And audience, we're here to help. And if you are wanting to get started with infinite banking, contact Create Tailwind, contact Kyle directly, contact me directly. We're not hard to find, createtailwind.com. And if you go into your community app, whether you're Android or Apple, and you look for Breakaway Wealth, you'll find our community, right? Breakaway Wealth community. And there's lots of free stuff in there. I'm not trying to sell you anything. We're trying to help you. We're trying to be those people that Kyle asked, well, who told you how to do that? Who helped you how to do that? We're trying to be those people for you. So if you want to do something, take us up on it. I remember just last thing, I promise I could ramble on. Maybe I've had too much coffee, is this friend of ours, he said to me, man, I am in having a bad day. He said, give me one thing. I said, all right, in the next 10 minutes, find a win. What can you do in the next 10 minutes that's a win? Obviously, it's not going to be a life-changing win. I don't care. I walked around the block. That's a win, right? And he said, thank you. That's exactly what I needed. Because winning makes you want to win again. So just one win. So what I would ask you, audience, today as we wrap it up, and we're about ready to turn it over to Earl, and everybody that's listened to this show before knows what I'm saying, is find one win in the next 10 minutes and just do it. Maybe it's a phone call you need to make. I don't care what it is. Do some jumping jacks. I don't care. Whatever it is. You got something you can make a win in 10 minutes. All right, audience, we're going to wrap this up like we always do with the incredible words of Earl Nightingale and the strangest secret. Whatever you think, you will become.
Here's the key to success and the key to failure. We become what we think about. Now let me say that again. We become what we think about.
Once again, thank you so much for taking the time to hear what was shared on today's podcast. If you are looking to discover new wealth building strategies, join our free online community and get access to free courses and in-depth training videos designed to help you build wealth and break away from the herd. Click the link in the show notes to access the community today. Thanks again for listening.